It's a ghost, whispered Chancellor Lurok, his eyes wide, unblinking, as the massive ship hung over the diplomatic station like a silent god. The Grand Galactic Summit was supposed to be a victory lap, the official division of humanity's former territories among the 12 surviving empires. Earth was dust. Sol had gone dark for nearly 200 years. The Terrans, violent and ungovernable, were declared extinct after the last stand of Titan. But now, hovering outside the Accord station, was a warship. Human. Ancient. But very much alive. It made no hails. No threats. It just existed. And that was enough to silence every voice in the chamber. The Nerix ambassador's voice finally broke the stillness. That signature, it's Terran code. Class Omega. That design hasn't been seen since the War of Exodus. Impossible, hissed High Vizier Tal Shor. They were eradicated. They were. The chamber lights flickered. Every console, screen, and comlink died for a moment. Then came a low hum, so deep it vibrated bones, passed through organs, settled in the very soul. On the main view screen, static swirled before forming a single phrase in a dead human language, translated by every implant, every AI, simultaneously. You stole what was ours. Silence again. No one dared breathe. The ship, this ghost of Sol, had done nothing but speak 7 words, and already panic was rippling across the outer sectors. In the heart of the Terran warship, designated EHA's Revenant, Captain Sarah Voss stood with arms folded, watching the diplomatic station rotate slowly below. Reaction time, 6.4 seconds. Typical, she said dryly. Her first officer, Lieutenant Kalen Juno, smirked. Council AI just tried to hack our translation stream. It tripped one of the old neuromorphic decoys. Let it run, Sarah said. We want them scared. Not dead. Not yet. They were descendants of survivors, the remnants of Earth who had fled into black space, away from betrayal and fire. Not extinct. Not broken. Evolved. For centuries, they hid. Rebuilt. Remembered. Now, it was time to remind the galaxy who humans truly were. Back on the Accord station, riots had begun. News had spread system-wide. The old enemy, the Terrans, had returned. Not as refugees, but as a sovereign force. Fleet Marshal Ralvek slammed his fist on the control panel. Ready every cruiser. Surround that warship. If it moves, we vaporize it. The orders echoed across the battle nets of 12 armadas. Thousands of alien ships spun into position. But as they locked targeting solutions, every weapon system shut down. Not destroyed. Not jammed. Denied. Back aboard the Revenant, Kalen raised an eyebrow. We're now inside $0 of full fleet formation. They're paralyzed. Send the gift, Sarah said. A single pod launched from the Terran warship, small, slow, unarmed. It passed unhindered through the outer shields of the station and gently embedded into the docking bay. Inside was no bomb. No bioweapon. Just a data crystal. The aliens, terrified yet curious, gathered around the decrypted projection. They saw everything. Footage from the last days of Earth. Council ships bombarding Terran cities after rejecting their seat at the Accord. Recordings of Terran diplomats being executed mid-negotiation. Crying children being left behind on Luna when the fleet fled. And then came the silence. 200 years of quiet vengeance. The final message of the recording, spoken by a young Terran girl, face soot-smeared, voice steady. If you're watching this, we're not extinct. We just stopped talking. Now we're done being silent. The alien empire stood shattered, not by firepower, not by war, but by truth. A truth that couldn't be silenced any longer. One by one, fleets withdrew. Treaties were voided. Systems formerly claimed by empires went dark, choosing instead to open communication lines towards Sol, cautiously respectful. In the weeks that followed, dozens of minor species requested Terran envoys. Trade offers. Apologies. And the Revenant? It never fired a single shot. It didn't need to. Sarah Voss sat in her command chair, staring at the stars. Think they'll come groveling? Kalen shrugged. Some. Others will resist. We'll give them a choice, she said coldly. They called us monsters. Now they get to choose which myth we become. What's our next move? Sarah leaned back. Send the Second Fleet. To where? She smiled, cold and calm. To the ones who thought the Council's betrayal would go unanswered. The Revenant turned and vanished into the stars, leaving the galaxy breathless in its wake. Star System, Neria 9. Date, July 14, 6421 Galactic Standard. Event, Zalthian Wargames, Day 2. From orbit, the planet below looked like a jewel, cerulean oceans wrapped in thick swirls of cloud, the kind of world life could thrive on. But this was no colony. This was a military testing ground, selected by the Zalthian Alliance to showcase their might. Today was a show of force. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of drones. Millions watching from across the galaxy. It was meant to be a warning, the Alliance was unchallenged. Until the warship came. The first sign wasn't a signature. It wasn't even a blip on sensors. It was silence. Fleet Admiral Zarn of the Zalthian High Guard blinked as the fleet AI froze mid-calculation. All active combat simulations abruptly terminated. Report, Zarn demanded. Unknown gravitational distortion, the AI began, before crashing entirely. And then, like a whisper from deep space, it arrived. A single Terran warship exited FTL directly into the war zone. No advance notice. No signature trail. Just a massive, obsidian vessel, shaped like a blade, outlined in pulses of blue light. Unmoving. Unbothered. On the bridge of the Terran super dreadnought ESS Warden, Commander Arlen Shaw stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He was silent, but not still. His presence radiated the kind of calm that came not from arrogance, but from unshakable confidence. Zalthian fleet has entered staggered formation, said Lieutenant Mara Vex. Weapons are online. They're targeting us. Let them, Shaw replied. But, we're not responding? No. But sir, we're in their war game. They might open fire. Shaw turned to her with a small, humorless smile. If they do, they'll finally understand what a real war is. On the Zalthian flagship Havoc's Pride, alarms screamed. This ship is unregistered, shouted Tactical Officer Near. Design unknown. Material composition fragmented. We can't scan it. Raise shields. Lock weapons. Warn them off, Fleet Admiral Zarn barked. No response to hails. No EM transmissions. No heat signature. No crew biosigns. That froze the entire bridge crew. No biosigns? On a ship that size? Could it be AI controlled? Near offered weakly. Or a ghost, someone whispered under their breath. Outside, the Terran warship remained still, as if observing, evaluating. Measuring. Then something happened that no one expected. Every ship in the Zalthian fleet lost power. Weapons shut down. Engines powered off. Life support stalled for exactly 2.7 seconds. And then everything turned back on. But nothing was the same. Back aboard the Warden, Lieutenant Vex stared at the readings in disbelief. We just disabled 343 enemy ships simultaneously without a single shot. EMP, she guessed. No, replied Chief Systems Engineer Lato. We used quantum resonance. Their systems never knew they were compromised. Shaw nodded. Terran tech was never about brute strength. It was always about ending the fight before it starts. He turned to communications. Send the message. Across every bridge, cockpit, and command screen of the Zalthian fleet, a phrase appeared not in Terran tongue, but perfectly translated to every species' native thought patterns. It wasn't heard. It was understood. War is over. You lost before you began. Fleet Admiral Zarn gritted his teeth. This is psychological warfare. A bluff. Fire everything. I want that warship in pieces. Silence. Admiral, we can't fire. What? Our weapon systems, they're locked. The targeting systems have been rewritten. By who? By them. It wasn't that the Warden had hacked them. It had rewritten their definitions of hostile. The entire fleet now classified the Terran warship as non-targetable and object of reverence. On the bridge of the Warden, Shaw took a slow breath. Message received? Lieutenant Vex nodded. They're not responding, sir. But they're not trying to fight either. In fact, several ships are retreating? Good. It was never about destruction. It was about reminding the galaxy. Reminding them that Terrans weren't extinct. They hadn't disappeared. They had simply evolved out of necessity. Centuries ago, the galaxy united to contain humanity. To exile them from known space. To bury them under silence. But humanity didn't die. They adapted in the dark. And now, they had returned. The Warden slowly turned, engines pulsing once. No words. No threats. Just presence. The kind of presence that rewrites strategy. That redefines fear. That humbles even the boldest empire. As it vanished back into subspace, hundreds of Zalthian ships drifted in its wake, silent, stunned, and speechless. Galactic reaction. The Zalthian High Command suspended all future wargames indefinitely. Emergency councils were called across the galaxy. Entire fleets began re-evaluating their targeting protocols, terrified the Terrans had embedded sleeper code. The Accord issued a single statement. We welcome dialogue with Sol, should they still consider us worthy. Back aboard the Warden, Commander Shaw closed his eyes. One ship. One appearance. And the galaxy flinched. Lieutenant Vex turned to him. Was this the beginning? No, he whispered. This was the warning. The Galactic Tribunal, Station Ilion Prime. The chamber was monumental, constructed from starlight-forged alloy, shaped by centuries of power, and filled with delegates from all 13 high civilizations. Their robes shimmered with authority. Their words bent laws. Their judgments shaped the future of worlds. And today, they gathered to erase the past. Let it be entered into record, boomed the Chancellor of Memory, that humanity, the Terrans of Sol, were a reckless, warmongering race. Their extinction was a tragedy, yes, but a necessary one. A danger removed. Applause echoed through the chamber. The narrative was cementing. Humanity, dangerous, unstable, extinct. History would remember them as monsters. Or so they thought. High Marshal Ver of the Krashen Empire leaned back in his throne seat. With Earth gone and their colonies dissolved, let us proceed to divide Terran space. It must not remain unclaimed. Whispers of agreement stirred. Treaty maps were projected in holograms. Sectors once held by Earth were auctioned off with sterile efficiency, ancient human bastions like New Avalon, Titan Forge, and Eden's Reach reduced to glowing lines on a political grid. It was happening. The final burial of humanity. Until the alarm sounded. The chamber lights dimmed. Screens froze. Implants buzzed. The Tribunal AI stuttered an impossibility. Then, with terrifying clarity, a message overrode every system, every comline, every neural link in the entire station. We remember Earth. Terror seized the room. Not because of the message. But because of the signature. Terran. Authentic. Verified. And originating from orbit. The chamber's vast windows turned opaque as a single feed overtook them all, the live, high-definition visual of a ship entering high orbit above Ilion Prime. A warship. Monolithic. Angular. Ancient in shape, but impossibly advanced in its energy patterns. A silhouette no living being had seen in 2 centuries, but all recognized instantly. Terran design. Sol Fleet. Command class. The last time such a vessel was seen, it laid waste to 3 star systems in retaliation for the Council's betrayal of Earth. "This is impossible," stammered the Krashen Marshal. "This is a ghost," whispered the Drenari matriarch. "Extinct," gasped the Vasari elder. But no one dared look away. Then the warship spoke. Not with words. Not in language. It projected a memory. A recording. And everyone felt it, not in their ears, but in their minds. A Terran diplomat, old, proud, standing before the council chambers 217 years ago. "You betray peace today. You fear what you don't understand. But remember, this Earth may fall, but humanity is not soil and steel. We are memory. We are fury buried in silence. And one day, we will return." Then came images. Of Earth burning. Of orbital bombardments. Of shattered colonies. Of council fleets laughing as Terran children screamed into the void. The tribunal room went still. Because the truth had returned. Unfiltered. Unforgiving. Undeniable. Then the final scene played, a young Terran girl, maybe 6 years old, clinging to her mother as their escape pod spiraled into deep space. Her eyes wide. Her voice steady. "If you're watching this, it means we survived. We didn't die. We grew quiet. But now, we're awake again." The feed ended. The tribunal chamber sat in stunned silence. Then, as if some invisible noose pulled tight, the lights returned, and with them, a final message appeared in every mind. "You spoke of us as myth. Let us remind you, we are legend." Outside, the Terran ship didn't fire. It didn't need to. It existed. And that alone changed everything. Sector-wide impact. 3 member civilizations declared neutrality within 24 hours. Protests erupted across dozens of systems, demanding reparations for humanity. Military AI across 5 empires flagged Terran ships as supreme threat level. The Krashen fleet mobilized, then cancelled deployment. The galaxy had remembered fear. And not just fear of war, but fear of justice. Within the chamber, Chancellor of Memory tried to regain composure. "This cannot be confirmed. It could be illusion. Trickery. A rogue AI." "Enough," said Matriarch Ashi of the Vasari. Her words rang with weight. "We watched the truth with our own minds. We felt it. That was no fabrication." High Marshal Ver stood. "So what now? Do we bow to ghosts?" The Drenari delegate shook his head slowly. "Not ghosts. Humans." Above the tribunal, the Terran warship finally moved, slow, deliberate, majestic. Its engines pulsed once, rippling subspace like thunder. And then it was gone. Vanished into the stars, leaving no trace but the silence it carved in its wake. No message. No contact. Just a reminder. Humanity had returned. Not with conquest, but with truth. And that truth was sharper than any blade. 1 week later, a sealed communique was received on every major record homeworld. It read, "We are open to diplomacy on our terms. You may approach. Carefully. Signed, Sol Fleet Command. The Children of Earth." Back aboard the Terran warship EHA's Vigilant Memory, Commander Releasehart stood before a quiet bridge. "We did it," whispered her second in command. "No," she replied. "We reminded them.